Yeah, Bianca, I tell you what, very powerful morning we've had here in Lower Manhattan. Earlier today, it started out as a misty, rainy morning, very solemn and sad, quite fitting for this ceremony. But throughout the day, the sun has actually come out, and that too seems fitting, as so many of the families of the victims are now here celebrating the ones that they lost, remembering them. And that's really what's going on right now. They're reading all of the names of the victims here at the memorial here. And I want to show everyone what that looks like right now. It's touching to see. You know, a lot of these victims' families, the first responders, they come down here and they share hugs. They embrace each other, share a laugh, a tear, which we've seen. And not only is this a time to remember, the most important part, remembering all the men, women, and children that we lost, but also it's therapeutic, and they're able to continue the mourning process. In fact, I heard one daughter say, she was reading off her father's name. She said, quote, "You were the best brother, best dad, best son, our guardian angel. I love you and miss you every day." So still a lot of pain with these victims down here. Now, we also spoke with a woman. Her name is Bridget Gormley. Her father, Bianca, was a New York firefighter. Now, he didn't die during 9/11. He died 16 years later of cancer, and she tells us there's still so many others dealing with that kind of situation, and we can't forget about that on this day either.
A lot of people associate and think of 9/11 as a single day in history. 2001, it happened, and then that was it. People that died that day, which was tragic in its own sense. But what a lot of people outside of New York, outside of Washington, outside of Pennsylvania, Shanksville, don't realize is that people are still dying from the fallout of the collapse. And that number, if it hasn't already, it's going to surpass the number killed in all those places.
Okay, Bianca, now the program got underway at 8:43 sharp with the national anthem, along with the reading of the victims here. We've had several moments of silence, one for hijacked Flight 11 when it struck the North Tower, another when the South Tower was struck, one when the Pentagon was hit, down where Logan is. Also, when the South Tower fell, when Flight 93 went down over in Shanksville because of the incredible decisions, selfless decisions by the men and women on board, and then finally, when the North Tower fell. Now, again, another part of this, 22 years later, you know, we have a whole generation in our country that wasn't born when this happened. They're adults now, and it's so important to educate them, and there's so many people who have undertaken that task, and they want to keep the memory of those whom we lost and what happened here alive. Let's listen.
The education of the youth, I think, is the most important thing here. You know, especially in the military, you know, we're seeing declining numbers in our recruitment, you know, challenges, you know, all the way at the Pentagon. So that's something that, you know, I find like very important to ensure that, you know, coaches, mentors, teachers, you know, church groups, they're reaching out to the youth and encouraging them to understand 9/11, to understand the importance of protecting this great nation, and you're going out and becoming the future leaders of America's military.
Now, Bianca, I'm going to leave you with this. Right behind me about an hour ago, I saw a woman bend over. She kissed a name on the memorial, most likely a friend or even a loved one who we lost on 9/11. She walked away. She had to be helped away by a friend. She was crying. So we know this happened so many years ago, but for so many people, victims' families, still very fresh in their mind and still hard to cope with. And of course, we know that's very understandable. Bianca, back to you.
Bob Brooks, live in Lower Manhattan for us. Bob, thank you. Let's bring in former Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker. Matthew, good to see you as always. This is such an emotional day for millions of folks. And it's raw. It may be 22 years, but for some it's like it's yesterday, and the pain just comes back. I'd like to get your reaction to President Biden deciding not to be in New York, not to be at the Pentagon, Shanksville. He's in Alaska instead. And some say that decision isn't the best one, but perhaps his comments in Vietnam, where I'll play a little clip there, some saying maybe it's a good thing he's not at some of these more powerful and emotional visits. Here he was wrapping up at the G20 summit afterwards in Vietnam.
Nobody likes having celebrated international meetings if you don't know what you want at the meeting, if you don't have a game plan. He may have a game plan. He just hasn't shared it with me. But I tell you what, I don't know about you, but I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah, so he's going to go to bed. I mean, he's sort of, fumbling there, mumbling, and was cut off. That's our president here on a day like today, where so many people would hope that we could, bring Americans together and talk about the tragedy, but also what it means for our nation moving forward. And it doesn't seem like the White House or the president was able to do that or willing.
No, you're right, and it's good to be with you. I think, September 11th every year, I think reminds all Americans of not only what happened and how we are a different country from 22 years ago, but it also, reminds us of where we were and how we all responded. And I think for many of us, it was a moment of patriotism, of, really a time in our life where the United States came together. And really, as all parties dropped their differences and understood that this was a brave new world that we had to address. And so, obviously, all the individuals we lost on that day and all those that are still, to the point earlier, that are perishing because of the legacy diseases from ground zero. I think all those things are so important. And the president obviously has to do a few things correctly, and this is where I just don't understand his decision, those around him, to not put him at one of these sites to commemorate what happened on September 11th, and again to rally the country to a common cause, to fight global terrorism, to make sure that the United States is the shining city on the hill. And I was very concerned when they tried to message his not appearing at one of these sites today as that we needed to move on, or somehow treat it more like, I guess, Pearl Harbor, which was an entirely different situation than what happened here. And so, I say all that to just, again, have a heartfelt remembrance. I'm never going to forget. I know you and others, we love this country, and we're not going to forget what happened on September 11th, and we're going to ensure that it never happens again.
Absolutely. Well said. Yeah, there is no moving on from this deadliest terror attack on our soil ever. The world changed forever. We'll be speaking with more family members and Bernard Kerik, Rudy Giuliani in a bit too throughout the broadcast. I want to get your reaction, though, while we have you, to a big ruling. A federal appeals court did rule that the Biden administration likely violated Americans' First Amendment rights when it worked to censor speech during the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's a lot of concern that they might try to do it again with all this masking that's now resurfacing ahead of the election. What's your reaction to this ruling, Matthew?
Well, again, it puts the law where it should be, which is the First Amendment does not allow the government to restrict an American's right to speech. And, and what happened during that period of time, the White House and the federal government were using proxies, these companies, these social media platforms that are run by these companies, to take people off, to deplatform, to silence folks that disagreed with the official COVID narrative. And so to have a court say that that is not permitted under the Constitution and our legal traditions, I think is a big win for freedoms. It's for our Constitution. And that's one of the things that I feel very strongly about, is that our Constitution isn't just for the good days. It's for every day, to protect Americans' rights, God-given rights, against a tyrannical government.
Last question. I know you were with former President Trump over the weekend in Iowa. He also picked up an endorsement from South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem the night before. Tell us about how it was being there at the big game with him. It looked like quite a great welcoming for President Trump.
Well, yeah, I spent the whole day with him. We went to the AGR house, and we had a great time
flipping
with
burgers.
The members of that fraternity. Yeah, we flipped burgers, threw footballs, and then we went to the football game, and my beloved Hawkeyes won. So, and I was able to, we spent the game talking about not only politics, but football and just sports general. He's a great sportsman, loves participating in sports. He's, avid golfer. We talked about the U.S. Open, and just, we're able to, really spend some time together, and I think he enjoyed it. It was obviously a political appearance, but he enjoyed it.
I think the frat boys did as well. We're trying to speak to some of them. Good video out there.
They had a
All
blast.
right. Thank you. Matthew Whitaker, good to see you, sir. Appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Thank you.